My name is Martha Wong. I'm from Houston, Texas, and I'm a former House member representing District 134. I was lucky to serve in the House of Representatives with Senator Hughes and with Senator Kolkhorst, so it's good to see both of you. I am here to testify against Senate Bill 134. I hate to do this because Senator Kolkhorst is a dear friend, but I do want to bring out some points that I think that we could hopefully compromise and make the bill better. I do believe that the part regarding the security of our land is very important, and that is the best part of the bill. What happens when we write a bill, and I know that, and the senator knows that too, is we intend to make Texas better. That's our goal as representatives and as senators. But what happens sometimes is that there are unintended consequences. The unintended consequences, I think, are what most people were speaking about today. The unintended consequences is causing many Asians to be discriminated against. It's not that the bill is discriminating, but it's that it's causing other people to be discriminating. I don't know how many of you know of which ethnicity I am. Maybe only because of my name. I could be Korean. I could be Vietnamese. I could be Chinese, I could be Filipino, and I'm just wondering how many of you know what I am, of what ethnicity I am. And that is the problem, that people cannot discriminate or cannot tell of which ethnicity you are. And so that is one of the problems when you are listing the nations that you want to eliminate, having those citizens purchase properties are in the state of Texas. What I think that we need to do is I want to tell you about my life, because I think in my life I personally have not been shown discrimination, but my family has. My father was an American citizen. He was a grocerman in Rouville, Mississippi. At that time, the Chinese were not considered white, so they were considered black. And because of that, the children had to go to the black schools. In the 1930s and early 1940s, the black schools in Mississippi were in deplorable condition. My father was smart enough to leave Mississippi and come to Texas. And he came because he had a daughter at that time whom he wanted to have a good education. As you know, Asians value education, one of the most important things besides valuing your family and your family name. So my sister was able to go to a white school. I was born in 1939, so Senator Hughes, I don't think you realize how old I am, because you were a young boy when we served together, and I'm an old lady now. But my parents, when my father moved to Houston, he thought that my sister would be able to go to a white school, which she was able to go to, but nobody would sell him a home or rent him an apartment. Therefore, and that was discrimination, okay, therefore, my father and our family had to live in the storeroom of our grocery store. I was born shortly after that, and for the first 6 years of my life, I lived in the storeroom of my father's grocery store. We had 2 beds there, one for my parents and one for my 2 sisters and me. We lived in that storeroom where we had boxes of groceries that were stacked to the ceiling, because that's where we had to store the extra groceries that were coming in. Luckily, I was able to finish school in Houston, Texas. I graduated from the University of Texas. I have a master's and a doctor's degree from the University of Houston. And when I married, I was able to live with my in-laws for 5 years until my third child was born. Then we moved into Meyerland, which is a wonderful part of Houston. But I did not realize in the 1960s or 1959, one of my friend's parents tried to build a home in Meyerland. And one of the people across the street from the lot that he was going to build on, the persons had petitioned not to allow the Chinese man to build on that lot. He started a petition not to allow Chinese to build a house on a lot in Meyerland. Fast forward some 8 years later, I moved into Meyerland, and then, luckily, I was able to represent the Meyerland community at the Houston City Council. Now, also in the 1960s, the River Oaks area of Houston, Texas, which is one of the wealthy areas of Houston, Texas, and Paul knows that area well, they had in their deed restrictions that Jewish people could not buy in River Oaks. It only allowed white Caucasians, which also meant that Chinese could not buy in River Oaks. Fast forward, in 2003, I was able to represent the River Oaks area at the House of Representatives. So we have moved forward in the state of Texas. And I know that the intentions of Senator Kolkhorst and this committee is that we move forward. But what has happened is the unintentional consequences is going to cause us to have some backward movement. We do not want that backward movement where people, when they look at me, think that I'm a communist. That is what is happening. There are people, I live in the high rise in Houston, Texas. Across the street from me, across the freeway, is the Viatopia restaurant. The woman at the Viatopia restaurant, the owner, was told to go home. Go home. That was during the COVID period when people were being very discriminating against Asians because of the Wuhan Chinese concern about the virus. And I do not want that virus any more than anyone else does. So that's the unintended consequences, not that Senator Kolkhorst or anybody else wants to discriminate against Asian Americans. I know you guys too well to know that that's not your intent. But the unintended consequences is what everyone has been talking about. I would recommend that you look at your bill very closely, and I know that there is a bill in the House, House Bill 1075. House Bill 1075 by Harris. And it tries to do basically the same thing that Senate bill is trying to do, but the wording is different. And they're using wording that says foreign nations. In fact, I don't understand why Canada, England, or any other country needs to buy farmland in the United States, not just the enemy countries. And I would highly recommend that you look at the wording of the other bill, 1075, and see if you can do that to help people who unintentionally will be discriminated against. I have seen it in my lifetime, and many people here today have testified to that. The best thing that has happened because of this bill is that we had, how many people testified today? 139 is what I was told. About 129 of them were against the bill. It's the first time that I have ever seen so many Asians in the State House. That's the good part. Asians are being a part of the political process, which I have been trying to do for years. I have been doing that for years, and if you remember Steve Ministeri, when he was the chairman of the Texas Republican Party, he came to me and said, Martha, you need to start the Asian Americans Assembly to get Asian Americans involved in the political process. The chairman asked me to do that. I did that, and now we have chapters in Austin, in Dallas, in San Antonio, and in Houston. And so I started at the asking of Steve Ministeri to start the Texas Asian American Assembly, and I have done that. We are working very hard to involve the Asians in the political process. We are working very hard to get them to come into the Republican Party. Other people are saying the Republicans do not like the Chinese. Come to our party. That is happening. It is unfortunate, but they are using this bill to convince people that they are victims. And so I urge you to look at the wording very closely. I know you have a time to still work on the bill, and I urge you to do this. I am 100% for protecting our land here. I think that's very important. I know that. And I urge you to consider the language regarding the nations. Thank you so much, Senator, for your work. Thank you for waking up the Asian community, because you have done that, and that's very important. And thank you, Senator Hughes, for your service and your leadership. And to my dear friend, Senator Bettencourt, whom I greatly admire, and as those of you who don't live in Houston know that he is greatly admired in our area. So thank you for coming down to hear me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.